Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
So thank you for coming into this session. My name is Robert Gwaltney, and I'm a member of the Broadleaf Board. And it is my pleasure this afternoon for us to enter into conversation about branding, building a literary brand. And on the panel this afternoon, I have with me McLeod Chapman and Jeffrey Lofton. A little bit about Clay. He is the author of novels Ghost Eaters, Whisper Down the Lane, The Remaking, and Miss Corpus, story collections Nothing Untoward, Toward, Commencement, and Rest Area, as well as The Tribe, a middle grade series, Homeroom Headhunters, Camp Cannibal, and Academic Assassins. His new novel, What Kind of Mother, was released on September 12th. Jeffrey Lofton. Yes, congratulations. Jeffrey Lofton hails from Warm Springs, Georgia, best known as the home of Roosevelt's Little White House. He calls the nation's capital home now and has for over 3 decades. During those early years of living in Washington, D.C., he spent many a night trotting the boards of D.C.'s theaters and performing arts centers, including the Kennedy Center, Signature Theater, Woolly Mammoth, and Studio Theater. Ready Play Susie is his first novel, a fictionalized memoir written through his personal lens growing up gay, physically misshapen outsider in a conservative family and community in the Deep South. Welcome, Jeffrey.
Thank you.
So today, the title of today's session is Remember Me, How to Build a Literary Brand That Lasts. But really, I think we should have called it Look at Me, because that's what we really are all vying to do. Yeah, I think there are 2 things that you can count on in life, and one is death, and that every Tuesday a new crop of books will make their way into the world.
And taxes.
Yeah, and taxes. And we're all grappling just for a little bit of attention. So we're going to talk today a little bit about that. Literature is the intersection of commerce and art. And of course, I think that this is something that all emerging writers should really begin talking about and thinking about now. I want to first start off by talking a little bit about author brand. So I'm just going to ask each of you what your definition of an author brand is and what you feel your own personal author brand is.
Hi. It's a really interesting question. I think it evolves. The answer evolves. I think the first time that I was personally aware of an author brand was William S. Burroughs, and it was the idea of there's the book, and the book comes first, but who is this kind of mysterious person behind the book? And sometimes that mysterious person could come before the book, and I was a big fan of the Beats growing up, so Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, these amazing writers, but I was also aware of the authors, the writers themselves, and that their kind of personalities were kind of, if not equal to, almost above and transcendent to the material. So I don't know if it is the best answer, but my immediate answer was to think back to the Beats of where I could pick a book off of the shelf and absorb myself into the story and not reflect on who the author is. But then there is, now kind of author brand is kind of it's almost a requirement by the industry of who are you? What is your identity? How can you be a part of this process of marketing, publicity? And I think the most kind of charitable version of it for myself personally and my author brand is I'm not a bestseller. I don't know if I'll ever be a bestseller. I would love to be a bestseller. I don't know if it's in the cards for me. But I have found that I am the best, I am in the trenches with my book. And if that means going out to conferences, to readings, to events, and just and being the person who kind of boots on the ground, shares that book, that that I could be that kind of first volley as a person, the metaphor that I think I want to go for is you throw a pebble in a pond and there's a ripple effect. You, the author, are that pebble. You are the first kind of lob, and then you want to just create this ripple effect. And if it's a big pebble, if it's a rock, you know, that ripple effect will go wide, wide, wide. And you want those ripples that go beyond you. So you want someone else talking about your book. You want booksellers talking about your book. You want librarians talking about your book. You want people on social media talking about your book. And you can be responsible for those initial lobs, but then there's that ethereal thing that kind of takes over. And branding-wise, I have to posit myself as someone that is worth people's time. And I am learning about my identity and who I am as not only an author, but as a human being. And sometimes those things go hand in hand. So it's not just author brand, it's human brand.
I agree. I think it's a great way to think of it, because we are our works, aren't we? It's such a personal enterprise to put your stories out there, whether it's about, the stories are about you or they're made up, you know, completely of other characters. There's always a little bit of about you in there. But when I think about brand, I think about big companies like Apple and Starbucks and Mercedes and IKEA, and, you know, name any of them, because they have a really identifiable logo. So at a glance, you know, a split second of view, you know exactly what that product is, and you have an idea of what that product means, your relationship to it, its relationship to you, which is what they're doing. They're trying, those companies, those big corporations, spend millions of dollars every day probably, trying to get your attention, trying to insinuate themselves into your lives, trying to have some impact in your life, trying to build a relationship with you. They spend time on social media, advertising, product placement, branded content, just, you know, it's everywhere. And it's pretty effective because you know who they are. Whether or not you use those products or like them, it's really reaching the masses, and enough people use them so that they can afford to continue to spend those millions and millions and millions of dollars to put their brand out there. Well, we can apply that to ourselves. We can have an identifiable logo or brand ourselves. And the good news is it doesn't take millions and millions of dollars for us to do it. We can do it in different ways. And it's important to do it because we receive, and someone might argue that it's more, but we receive about, guess how many messages we receive every day? Who wants to guess?
You specifically?
No, just a person in general.
10,000.
10,000. Good guess. Anybody else? It's about 1,200. But, you know, 1,200 is a lot too. How many of those do you think we actually were able to absorb?
9.
9? I like that answer, and so we're going to go with it. About 200. So there are a lot of messages that come at us, you know, ping us here, ping us there, that don't land. So there's a lot of noise out there. Our job as people, as authors, as products, really, is to cut through the clutter so that people see us and know us, and we mean something to them, that we can develop a relationship with them. So how do you do that? Well, one way is to create your own brand. I have a brand. I think of myself as a Southern author who writes quirky stories with quirky characters with delicious backstories. That's how I think of myself. I don't go around saying that all the time, but that's how I think of myself. So when I write, when I go out and meet people, that's sort of what I'm about. That's what I'm thinking. And how do I do it visually? How do I do it visually?
No idea.
That's an easy one. Does anybody want to take that? Colorful suits and bow ties. But I'm consistent about it. Rarely will you catch me out in public without a tie or without a suit and a bow tie. And I also have a style in the way I communicate on social media and with people. I'm, kind of semi-formal in the way that I write on social media, and I try to be collegial and, promote myself as much as I promote other authors. It's just my style, but it's about consistency, so that when people encounter me, they know what to expect. So that's, and I made some notes because I wanted to be able to share particular information, but you have to remind people again and again who you are. And, also, there's this tendency, I think, to sort of be everything to everybody so that you can please everybody and attract everybody, but I don't want to do that. Number one, because I think it's not possible, and number two, I think it makes anyone who tries to do that is sort of, they're diluting themselves and their brand. If you're everything to everybody, then you're nothing to anyone. I don't want to be everybody's cup of sweet tea. So I try to be my authentic self, and if people don't get me, or that's okay, because hopefully there are people out there for whom I resonate, and so that's what personal brand means to me. Be yourself.
So Clay and I are just two bald fellas riding and just trying to survive the best we can. Sorry. Well, so you started earlier talking a little bit about someone whose brand you had admired and watched. Let's talk a little bit about other people who you admire, who you think are doing it right, and why do you think that they've got it?
Okay, that's interesting. I I grew up under the assumption that writers kind of lived in a vacuum, and that we can write in our closet spaces, our attic spaces, our basement spaces, our office spaces, and that's it. That the book is published and then it's out there, and like you did your job. You worked in that vacuum, and on to the next one. And once I kind of eked into the industry, there's that conversation you have with your editors, and they're like, so how are you gonna do this? How are you gonna put yourself out there now? And it's like, oh, there's this entire other facet, this new facet, this kind of evolved facet of you now have to convince people to, getting your book onto the shelf is half the battle, getting that book off of the shelf and into readers' hands is the other half of the battle. And you're the kind of the face of that, the forefront of that. And it kind of quickly debunked that, or demystified that kind of mystique of like, oh, the author's at home, But then I started kind of looking to who are the authors that I really admire, and beyond the beats, it's so funny because I'm just thinking of like who, when I was a teenager and a college student growing up and reading books like, I remember, something like Rimbaud, or Hunter S. Thompson, or Charles Bukowski, or these or Hemingway, or like all of these authors who like you were aware of them as personalities. They were like these kind of bold personalities, and I like. I wouldn't necessarily want to hang out with them, but they were like the cult of their personality was so strong that there was something to kind of this mystique to it, like, oh my God, like who's that person? Like that's amazing. But in this day and age, with social media and the kind of like, the ability to kind of present oneself as like, hi, I am the kind of the spokesperson for this book. This is who I am. I wrote this. I think you should read it. Who are the people who are doing it that I admire? The first person who comes to my mind is this genre author, horror author by the name of Eric LaRocca, and I'm going to suggest him to you as someone who is, he has this amazing thing that he does where his mother goes to all the Barnes and Nobles and like holds up her son's books and like just presents them, and it's the most adorable thing. And it's not his brand, it's not him, but it's like a thing that he does, that his mother does, and it is immediately like his thing, and I love it. I want to go. I want to see her do it every day. But his books are terrifying. Like his books are. I'm talking about this, and I'm like, oh my God! If someone in this room reads Eric LaRocca's books, they're gonna blame me, and it's gonna be bad because they are the most terrible. Like they are painful books. So grain of salt. But his mom loves his books, but I think it's something that kind of sets him aside. Who are some of the other amazing ones? Like I think of, I'm a Cormac McCarthy fan, and like he's someone who's so kind of stubbornly non-branded. Like he's not a brand, but like he becomes this kind of like in the negative space of branding. He is his own brand. So I don't feel like that's a great example. What he is? He is a brand?
No, he's a brand.
He's a brand. I feel like there are people who are savvy with social media, and I don't know if that's the same thing as branding. What I really appreciate is when an author has created a body of work that that is their brand, and I wish we would all be so lucky that could be the brand, that's the kind of immediately identifiable thing. So I respond to Stephen Graham Jones or Rachel Harrison, all of these authors who are putting themselves out there in a way that doesn't feel too overt or too overpowering, but like you respond to them on a personal level because it feels like there's a level of sincerity or earnestness behind. It's never as much look at me, look at me, look at me. It's like look at this thing I'm doing. So yeah, those are people who I admire, who are presently publishing, who I think are doing a great job. But all of us should get our mothers to go to Barnes & Noble.
My mother is not allowed to go anywhere. She's dangerous on social media.
You can't control that.
So what about you, Jeffrey? Who do you think is doing it well?
So I actually have one author in particular in mind, and actually Jan and I talked about this author earlier today. His name is Rashid Newson, and he wrote a book called My Government Means to Kill Me. And we'll start with the book. The book is new and fresh. It's a novel. You think it's actually a memoir when you read it. It has historical characters in it, fictionalized, but the book has footnotes. And I actually got a chance to meet Rashid a couple of months ago, and I said, why does your book have footnotes in it? Because it's a novel, And he said, well, there's information in the book that a certain segment of the reading community will know. It's information they'll know, and I don't want to bore them by putting it in the actual, text in the book. And he said, so I decided to put them in footnotes so that they're there for the people who don't know it, but people who know the world of New York City in the 1980s is where it's set. And he said, for people who were living in New York City in the 1980s and know that world, that culture, they can just read the book. They can skip the footnotes. But the people who really want this information and need it, they can read it. So that in and of itself was new to me. And but he's translated this book into a brilliant social media campaign in which he records, he finds video or photographs or something from that era, and he brings these footnotes to life. And it's not his voice; it's a automated Instagram or TikTok automated
AI.
AI,
Yep.
yeah, AI, and to read the footnote, and they last a minute maybe, and they're little documentaries, and it's just I don't know anyone who's doing that. It's just new.
Wow.
Not that we should all go out and start putting footnotes in our books, but it might work for some of us. But it's an example of how you can, if you really think about it, maybe you can do something fresh and new, and then for your work, for your book, and then translate it in a way that you can then use it to market the book. and build an audience and tell people, and more importantly, tell people who you are and what your work is about. That's my example. And there are others who are they're very good at getting people's attention, drawing in a crowd. But I wanted to use him as an example because it's so different from anything that I've experienced.
So Clay made a good point earlier. He said he doesn't necessarily think that social media really equates to brand, and I believe that that's true. I think that social media is a means to an end, and an opportunity for you to be able to get the word out about your brand. Talk a little bit about the intersection of brand and social media with the building, and execution of your own brands. How do you approach it?
I'm learning, and as soon as I learn a lesson, that app has died, and we're on to the next app. And I feel okay. So what do I think? I think with my brand, I'm creating an identity. I'm creating a different version of me, and it's important for me to kind of remain cognizant of that. That this is us. We're in this room together. We exist. We're flesh and blood, and yet there is this other alternate parallel us that exists online in social media, and that the kind of the network that creates is in of itself a space that we can kind of travel and explore and connect, and it is one that is both positive and very negative, very there's a balance there, and it's like you have to kind of find your personal balance of like how much you want to kind of engage with that world and put yourself out there in that world. The intersection for me and my kind of identity, my social media identity, I've been really lucky. I've been very fortunate for the last few years to be at one publisher, and this one publisher has been very supportive and is sending me out on the road. And I'll do an event at a place. It'll be like 10 people. I don't know if those are great numbers for the publisher, but it's exciting for me to be out there in the world. And post-pandemic, I started going back on the road again. And I was at this bookstore in Toronto, and it's called Little Ghost Books. And Little Ghost Books is the most amazing bookstore because it's a horror bookstore. It's like a spooky bookstore. And it has all of these great books in it. And some of those books are written by my friends. And I was like, oh my God, none of my friends have been to this cozy little bookstore in Toronto, Canada, but I'm here right now. So I'm gonna take my phone and I'm gonna like make a little video and be like, hey guys, look, your book is here, your book is here, your book is here. And then I posted it online on social media, and I tagged all my friends. And it was this moment where there's like this epiphany point, and my friends loved it. They're like, oh my God, I've never been to this great bookstore, and it looks so amazing, and there's my book on the bookshelf. That makes me feel really happy. Retweet. And then all of a sudden, like the people who in their profile saw it, and then they retweet. Like all of a sudden, I'm not saying that like I got word out about Little Ghost Books because they're doing fine, but it was like there was a moment where I realized I had spent so much of my time being like, look at me guys, look at me, buy my book, buy like doing the echo chamber of like thinking I needed to draw all the attention towards me as the thing that needed to get out there. And this kind of shift in thinking of like, I'm just going to talk about all the books that I really love, that I'm excited about, written by people who I admire. And it created a thing which felt really exciting, which was that all of a sudden you can be an advocate for, you can be a fan. You can be a fan for books, and like all of a sudden it's like, I'm going to do this at the next bookstore. So, what I've been fortunate to have to have learned on the road is that it gets tedious not only for the people listening or perusing, but it also gets tedious to me to just be like, look, like I'm the brand, guys. Look at And so my pivot away from that is to say, social media is a tool in which connects us, so let's connect to the things that we love and respect and admire. And so rather than mouth off about myself, I want to like let's explore all the other amazing, and then like you can talk to booksellers, and all of a sudden you can like rope a bookseller in and like, look at this bookseller, she's selling all these amazing books, and like all of a sudden like, look at this librarian, and it becomes a thing that like, as much as you want to believe it's a community, it's not until you start embracing the community and integrating yourself into the community that you are participating in that community. So my learning curve for branding is that it isn't so much that I need to like focus solely on myself on social media as much as like use the tool as an amplification or a platform to kind of support others. And best case scenario, it bounces back. It comes back to you in dividends, and maybe that's book sales, maybe it's not, or awareness. But it's the whole pay it forward thing, and I think that's become my hope in my branding, that I just want to be someone who supports and cheerleads rather than this is why you gotta pay attention to me.
I agree. I mean, I was thinking about other folks. I like to do that too. I call it books in the wild. So I go and just take photographs of books. You know, I don't move them off the shelf, but they're facing forward or on a table, and then tag people, and it promotes indie bookstores too. So I think of social media as sort of the wonderment of the good and the bad. It's just got everything in it. The good, you can connect with people more easily. You can share your own message. You can amplify others. There's so much good that you can accomplish. You can tell people exactly what you want them to think and know about you. And then, of course, you can trash people. You can, say bad things. You can give bad reviews to books if you want. There's the negative side of it too. It also stands in the way of people meeting face to face, which is a horrible outcome of this communications explosion we've experienced over the last several decades, in particular the last 10 or 15 years or so. I think it's really about how we use it, and amplifying others is a really important way to do it. But it's almost, it's like a Game of Thrones dragon with an endless appetite. It sort of claims you, and you've got to like always feed it, or it will just. You can't sleep at night. Oh, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I woke up. I forgot to do that. I forgot to post. I forgot to check in. It can overtake your world. It can take over your life. It can take time away from doing important stuff, like
Writing.
Being with family. Like writing. Yeah. Writing. Yeah. But it's true. It's true. So it can be a beast that you cannot shake off of you if you let it. And so using it for positive things, that's really important too. But it does have such power, and like I made some additional notes. What else did I want to mention? Another important thing to know is that anything you put out there is always out there, forever. So watch yourself before you speak in the heat of the moment.
Sure.
Type in the heat of the moment.
I think that's a good transition into the potential pitfalls of social media.
Yeah.
Any words of advice in regards to any personal near catastrophes that you suffered as a result of social media, or anything in that regard? Are there certain areas of your own personal life or your own opinions that you veer from?
There have been a few kind of instances where, I think that we've all kind of experienced, maybe you connect with someone who might not be in a place where it's healthy to stay in touch, to kind of engage with that person. And I've had people who have kind of, I don't block my profiles, and my personal profiles are also my author profiles. So there isn't a division of me as the author versus me as the family man. So if I'm posting a picture of my children, that's going to, you know, that's out there. So I feel like it's good to be mindful of, you know, you think you're posting to your friends and family, but you're posting to the world, and there's a lot of people out there who's on the, you know, that you will never know who those people are, and they might have an avatar that is Mickey Mouse or, you know, some, you know, Sonic the Hedgehog, and you'll never know who who's the individual on the other side of that, and that can be risky. You know, I've had to block people. I've had to, you know, ask, you know, please, like, I'm pulling back from engaging with you, and then they can kind of either choose to continue with or without me, and, you know, but yeah, it's scary. It can be really scary. I think it could be particularly scary for women in a way that I am myself not kind of as aware of, and I think that, like, know your boundaries, know where to draw lines, know where to kind of say yes, no, because otherwise, yeah, I don't know, it's a, you know, just I'm thinking of, like, all the people who have been like, okay, thank you, like, you know, this is where this ends, and then if it gets to a heated place, it'll be like block, and, you know, and yeah, honestly, like, maybe set your settings to private, and then, you know, choose who comes into that kind of circle, which is the challenge I'm having. Is by doing that, I'm like, well, nobody can find me now. Like, I've like walled myself off, and I'm scared that the people who I want to find me aren't going to find me because I'm not pressing accept. So there's kind of benefits and detriments to where you draw that line, but you have to draw that line for yourself.
I've typed a few things that I thought, you know, spell check, changed it. Like the other day I typed hoped instead of hopped, I think, which is not a big thing, but I thought, they're going to think I don't know what the word means, you know. And, so nothing catastrophic yet, knock wood. But I think that the concern, I'm always very careful about what I post because I want to be myself, but I also want to be, you know, sensitive to other people and not post something that might trigger someone's discomfort or anything. And also associating with other people. If I follow someone, I might not know as much about them as I should to be associated with them. And I think, well, if I do that and I'm unknowingly, what's the word I'm looking for? Endorsing someone's belief that I have no intention of doing, you know. So I think there's a shorthand. There's a shorthand to building relationships online that can be wonderful, and you can really meet some really great folks. But you can also associate yourself with people who just don't think the same way and have the same beliefs that you have, and that's something that I try to be sensitive to and not do. But, as far as catastrophes, I hope not. If you know of anything, point it out. Maybe something I'm not aware of. It'll make my
We'll
day.
talk later.
But there's something interesting about that where it's like I feel like we're all kind of learning, and now we've created this like baby version of ourselves, this social media baby of us, and that version of us is learning how to exist and kind of live independently of us. So that idea of like saying something, declaring something online on social media, someone will respond, and it'll be like, you said something that hurt me, or that like I want you to know that this is it affected me because of this. And all of a sudden, when that happens to me, I'll be like, oh my God, like I didn't even think about that. And all of a sudden, this bias that I've had is being kind of confronted, and I get to kind of explore it, kind of focus on it, and like it is interesting to kind of navigate those waters of like, you know, when we pontificate or kind of express an opinion or kind of share something, you know, that we just kind of send it out into the send it downriver and like hope it like floats. You never like there's who is receiving that on the other side and what they're bringing to the table, and I do find it's interesting when you can kind of use it as a learning tool and evolve.
Yeah. Also, it's a curated version of ourselves. It's not like knowing the person behind the profile. You get a chance to choose what you share, and it's probably the best pieces of you, and not your faults and foibles, not your authentic self. And I think that it's kind of anybody, not just anybody who puts a profile out there, there's a responsibility to do it responsibly, to not put an unattainable version of a person out there that people might think, oh, I can't do that. And it's not even a real person, it's just part of a person. So that's a responsibility I think that anybody has to, I don't know, I think the point's made, the words are not coming to me exactly.
You don't want to be the gripey author. I think
Just it.
No, but I find when an author is like, oh, I got another 1-star review from this person, or they I think that a thing that I've learned for me is that when authors kind of express a kind of dissatisfaction with something in the industry, I'm always kind of curious how that reads to people kind of on the other side of that. And I try not to complain online as a social media presence because I think we can have opinions on matters and kind of we can share those opinions, but when it's kind of like grumpy author, I try to reserve.
Yeah, I always ask myself, what would Dolly Parton do? Then I
Give
put on the
books to
wig.
kids,
Yeah.
that's what she did.
Exactly. Yeah, St. Dolly. So your novel, you have a novel that's made its way out into the world. Your next book doesn't come out for a couple of years. How do you remain connected to the reading and writing community? How do you keep yourself out in the world and relevant?
I think we've kind of bifurcated ourselves. So there's our public self, our real life self, and our social media self. And I think our real world self goes to events and is there for other authors in your community. Like you go to events, you go to book releases, you go to readings, you go to conferences. You just, whether you are the person kind of on display or not, like you just show up. Like you're there for others because, as much as you want this to be about community building, I think that's important. That like if you want people to be there for your event, you got to be there for them. And then in terms of our social media selves, I think what helps is again to engage. Hey, I read this amazing book by this amazing author, and I think you should read it. That to me is like the most response I ever get from social media at large is when I'm kind of like sharing the things that had an impact on me, much more than when I'm like, buy my book, because I think there's like a lot of goodwill there. So I think that even if like it's a year out, 2 years out from your next book, you can engage by talking about I went to this amazing book release event tonight, and this you got to buy this book. I saw this amazing movie. I'm watching this amazing TV show. And then to respond to kind of other people, like, you love that book? I love that book. There's a communication there that there's value to that, I find. But yeah, do the real world stuff, like show up, and then communicate and share online.
Yeah, I agree. It's the same for me. And so during this last year, I've met so many new people, so many other authors and writers and readers, and it's just been, my world has just opened up exponentially. It's been wonderful. Like being at this conference, meeting so many new people, I love that. And so people have joined me in conversation at bookstores, and I've met some folks at book festivals, and I've been invited to be a conversation partner for someone in January already, and I think someone in actually October. So it's time to try to give back and be there to support them as they launch their next book or their debut books. And also, it's really just following up on that, not following, but expanding that idea of the books in the wild. You go to a bookstore and see people's books and posts saying, it's available, a signed copy at Politics and Prose or whatever. It's finding, just thinking and being in that mindset of how can you promote other folks. And then when it comes time, for your paperback to come out, then you go through the whole process again, and you try to go to bookstores and promote your work in its new form. But it's also about building it's an opportunity to really build the relationships strengthen the relationships that you've been building all this year. It's not just writers and readers and other authors. It's booksellers and supporting independent bookstores and libraries and writing communities like this. So any free time, aside from trying to write another book or right wrongs with your family and you've ignored, and take some naps every now and again. But I think it's again another responsibility too, because you can't just take all the time. You can't just say, okay, do this for me. It's time to do it to return that kindness and help others along their way. And it's all platitudes and on a point, but it's really about not making yourself the center of it all.
Agreed. I mean, I really do. We talked about literary community and how important it is, and I really don't think that you can build a brand without being an active member in the literary community. And everyone's community is a little different. Talk a little bit about your community, how you found it, and what that looks like. How is it comprised?
I love horror. I imbibe it, read it, watch it, and I write it. And I've been able to publish, fortunately, for over 20 years. My 11th, What Kind of Mother is my 11th published book, and I've written 30. The point there is that it's like when I first started off, horror didn't have a bookshelf at Barnes and Noble. We were kind of lumped in with fiction, and being able to kind of get off of the shelf was really challenging. I didn't find a community. It was really hard. And then social media was invented at some point along the way. This was 200 years ago, and I found in kind of publishing. When I came to Quirk Books, which I've been with them now going on 5 books, and they gave me a platform, which I'm so thankful for. And social media was there to kind of present me as meet your people, meet your tribe. And what I found was that because of social media, I could start connecting to the other horror people. There is a group called the Horror Writers Association, the HWA, and they have local chapters. There's an Atlanta chapter for those. I think a lot of you are in the HWA. And it's amazing how all of these local chapters are kind of building upon a larger macro organization. And I think the community, the horror community at large, is just comprised of fans that that these are the people who get really excited about reading, about writing, and hopefully sharing. There's nothing better than reading a really great book or seeing a really great movie and wanting to talk about it with people. And I find the way that I found my community was by talking about the books we loved. I met, I'm going to name drop Rachel Harrison again, because I met her in 2019 when she was about to publish this book called The Return, and it's a devastating book. And now, this week, my God, she published her 5th book called Black Sheep, which if you haven't read it, you totally should. And it's an amazing, wonderful novel. And you know, she's someone who I get to fanboy over, and you know, I think community is all about like, I don't know why I'm so gushy, but it's like when you get to meet your heroes, like I've been able to meet, I'm not, it's not peer group as much as it is like Paul Tremblay, oh my God, you know, like you like meet these people and you can kind of have a conversation with them, and that community is kind of built around, I want to say enthusiasm. The community, I know there could be critical and cynical and negative parts about it, but like, I have yet to join a community what's about like, oh, let's talk about how much we hate this book, or like let's talk about how much we don't like that thing. It's there, and I think it's a matter of kind of taking the oxygen out of those kind of pockets. But for me, the kind of community is really kind of built around like, have you read the new Paul Tremblay book? Oh my God, this is amazing, you know, like, and all of a sudden it's like, yeah, I just got it, like this, and like all of a sudden, that's a communication, like a form of communication that the community has, that I really like.
Well, it sort of goes back to the last answer I gave. It's, you know, community, it's I think I try to think of it less as a sort of a business, the writing business, and more just an expanding my circle of friends and family, because it is such a personal thing. I think it is for all of us. You know, we want, this comes out of our hearts as much as any place else, as much as our hands or our fingers onto the from pen to paper. So my circle of friends has just expanded. That means writers and authors and booksellers and you know my literary agent and that whole team and the editors. There's just so many new people, and they're not just new people. Their backgrounds and what they do in their worlds are different from the people that I already had in my world. So I just enjoy getting to know them and try to be as much of a friend to them as they've been to me, as one would in any walk of life. You know, you got to be a friend to have a friend, and part of that is face to face. You know, spending time together. Part of it is really just being a good literary community member and treating people well, treating people kindly, supporting them when their books come out, supporting them if they call with a, like, can you talk through this with me? I don't know what to do. I can't always read a book, you know, and edit and comment on a book for them because it's a huge commitment. But I can say, you know, I just don't have the bandwidth to do that. But I can do something for them. I can be a friend and listen. I can introduce them to somebody else who might be able to help them solve their problem. I can encourage them, because I think all of us can do this. If this squirrely little brain can accomplish that, anybody can. I really believe that. I believe that if you are passionate about it and you keep trying, you can do it. That's the kind of friend all of us needs. Somebody who will tell us that, because I've been told that before when I was down. That's what community means to me.
So the very last question, good philosophy. So I was going to ask lessons learned from a marketing and branding perspective for authors who were just beginning to get their feet wet, or for authors who were just trying to figure it out. I think this would be a good opportunity to open up for questions for both Jeffrey and Clyde. Questions? Sorry, no, Vinci next. You first.
This is being critical, but I have a very close friend who is an author, and her use of social media is A, very political, B, pictures of wine and great dinners that her husband have at restaurants, and pictures of her work with animals and stuff like that. And I wonder how that makes people think about her, because I know her personally, which is different. But how does just using her social media for that, how will people think about her?
Well, I mean, it's part of that going back to a curated life. It's not a full life, and it's really impossible to know someone completely through just a social media account. I mean, I would like to go on those dinners and do all those things, but I mean, how people perceive her, some people might have, they might think, I'd like to do all those kinds of things too. I don't know if they really believe that that's her entire life. It depends on the message you want to send. That's really the power of the platform. You can send any message that you want to. It depends on what she's trying to sell. If she's an author trying to sell her work, I don't know what. I'm trying to promote her writing. I don't know what message. I don't know what her writing is. Maybe she's a lifestyle author of some kind. I don't know.
It's more like a fictionalized memoir, actually.
Fictionalized memoir.
Yeah.
So I guess we should repeat the question for the people who are watching. I don't know. But the question was, a friend presents herself as being on dinners, and it's a very limited view into this person's world, and how does that make her appear?
Yeah, her social media seems to be incongruous with her life as an author.
Yeah. And I think the world can sense inauthentic. That's it, inauthentic. Thank you. Inauthentic profile. You have to be yourself if you want people to really believe it, because people sense it. They think, no, that doesn't seem like the real thing like that.
But also know, I mean, like it is a very kind of strange. You're only giving but so much of yourself to your social media presence. So, those curated kind of versions of yourself become like, at most they're a facet of who you are, but they're never the kind of whole. And I want to believe that the savvy viewer kind of understands that this is not them. We're only engaging with components of our personality. We're never engaging with the whole person. And I think that it's a strange challenge, because I don't want to give my entire self over to my social media presence. I am giving over a version of myself, but it is the version that I feel comfortable giving over. And if that is pictures of meals, pictures of pets, pictures of political views, that is attracting a certain audience, and also like the catalyst for a very particular conversation. Sometimes you want to be, that's the kind of conversation you want to have, and like the best way to have that conversation is to, I'm going to pose a view. This is my thought on something. Oh, well, I don't agree with that. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we're engaging, like we're going to have a conversation about this. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a choice there that your friend is making. And if they themselves were like, oh, this is too much or too little, they would either pump the brakes or press the gas pedal, I think. Thank you.
This question is for Jeffrey, actually. So, if your brand is colorful suits and striking colors and an amazing fashion sense, what is it like when you then get on stage with someone else who's doing the same thing?
Well, I never said amazing fashion sense, but thank you. So, the brand is really, it's your opportunity to tell people who you are. So this is, once I'm recognizable, what do people think about me? So it's about, okay, he's the guy always in a loud colored suit with a bow tie. But what else about it? Well, I'm the author of Break Message. That's the message I want to send, and I want to stand for something. I wrote this as a roadmap for young people who are in crisis, and part of the proceeds go to the Born This Way Foundation, the Trevor Project. So that's the message I want to send when people recognize me. But there's no competition with anybody else. So I think you're talking about Clay? Oh, Robert?
Well, so last night actually we wrestled in the parking lot on who could wear pink today. He's a lot stronger than he looks.
I know the question's not targeted towards me, but what I do want to kind of contribute is this idea that like there are so many authors, so many writers, and I think you can multiply that by at least 2, 3, that many readers. And what I have found in my social media self is that I should never feel like I'm in competition with another author in any shape or form. Their success today, you gotta, like, that is what we all gotta support, like, because tomorrow might be your day. And like, you know, we're all kind of figuring it out for ourselves, and like, how do I put myself out there in a way that people are gonna notice. But it is, you know, when I have my FOMO moments of like, God, what are they like just did that thing and it's so amazing, and oh, I want that too. You know, we all have those days, and I think the diet of social media, that thing you're talking about, the 2 a.m. moment, you know, we're so kind of just like the empty calories of social media have created this like desire for more, and like nom, like you just need it more now, faster, to the extent where you're not even aware of your own kind of personal successes and your own personal moments of like, this is my day. You just gotta hold on to that and know that you know, we're all in this together.
That's right. And I'll say that when I think of Robert Gwaltney, I think of someone I didn't know about a year ago, and I found this book online, and I said, oh, that looks interesting, so I went and got a copy, and I read it, and I reached out to the author, and I said, you don't know me, but I've got a book coming out early next year. I said, I liked your book, and I'd love to, chat sometime. And within 20 minutes, he had written back, and he has been a mentor and a friend. And his philosophy is there's room for all of us, like he said. And I think of that when I think of Robert Gwaltney, and when I see him in his resplendent attire.
And what is the name of his book for people who want to read it?
The name of Robert Gwaltney's book is The Cicada Tree, which Robert was named Georgia Author of the Year for his debut novel.
Enough about me.
So that brings us to the, oh, you had a question, one more question.
Yeah, this is kind of a quick question. I heard what you said about promoting others and being generous and stuff, but when you were promoting your book, did you do readings or something, book clubs or something on your social media to promote your book?
Yes. I made this kind of fun discovery. I did this very specific thing for my most recent book, and it actually did kind of well. And it was, I made these silly videos of moments of points of inspiration. I wrote this most recent book. It's called What Kind of Mother? Takes place around the Chesapeake Bay. It's where I grew up. So I actually went to all the places that I wrote about in the book and said, hi, this is me, I wrote this book, and this is the place that inspired that moment. And it was, I just made 10 of these videos, and every day I would post another one. And people really responded to it because they were like, oh wow, that's really, I get to see now the place where it inspired you to create, to tell this story. And it's the kind of the DVD bonus features, it's the kind of ancillary stuff. YouTube Live, Instagram Live, having you can do these readings to people, and maybe 5 people show up, maybe 50 people show up, but it's noon today, I'm gonna do this reading. If anyone wants to show up, I'll be there. And it just creates, you open up a door. Videos, so cheesy, and you're all here. When is the next time I'm gonna be in front of this many people? I don't know. So I am going to be really silly, and I'm going to make a video because I can. And on the count of 3, what we're all going to do is shout out broadleaf writers, right? Count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Broadleaf writers! Hey, right? And I'm going to put that on my Instagram feed, so it's all about branding, right?
So thank you so much, everyone, for coming to spend time with us, especially when you're away and I think about it just one bit of advice that I always give anytime I have an opportunity to be in front of other authors is something that we've touched on. Never compare your journey as a writer to that of others. It will only make you insane. And your journey is your own, and it is unique to you. And just be happy for others.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.